The majority of people who are law-abiding and have never been to a jail or prison would have no idea, have absolutely no idea what really goes on inside these institutions and jails.
People are stabbing and killing each other, and I'm stuck in the middle of it, and there's nothing I can do to stop it.
Post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, is a serious mental condition that some people develop after a shocking, terrifying, or dangerous event. These events are called traumas.
Almost every prison guard will experience some kind of traumatic event during a career, and most more than one. Things like assaults or suicides or murders. And the thing is, most never get help.
Working in a prison as a prison employee is probably one of the most stressful jobs that anybody can have in America. Very rarely does anybody talk about the stress that prison employees have to go through. They rather talk about the stress that prisoners go through and some of the daily activities of prisoners in prisons in the United States.
Before I really didn't know what to expect. I found that I was more affected than I realized I was. I used to drive myself to work every day, and on the way home I would get in my car and I would play music, and by the time I got home I had decompressed.
My operation counselors, I wouldn't trade them for the world. We was a force in a building where we was outnumbered by the residents.
Working in a correctional field definitely changed me. I'm this big vivacious person outside of work. I have this big personality. People are drawn to me. They want to talk to me. And at work, I can't be that person. I have to be assertive and aggressive and no nonsense.
Yeah, my experience in corrections, it was pretty tough. It was a lot of division. It was a lot of just, I'm over you, so you do what I say type stuff, and it was kind of crazy. People talking to you, demeaning, bring you down to a smaller, making you feel small.
You're always on the line. You never know what can happen, when it will happen, but it's a job that someone has to do.
They don't know how to work for what they, want. They take what they want.
Respect is a big issue. How you treat somebody is how you're going to be treated.
A situation arose where we only had one car and my husband was picking me up, and when I would get in the car with him, everything he said was just totally annoying to me, and by the time we got home we were arguing and fussing, and I realized that it all had to do with the environment that I was subjected to every day.
As an OC, your job is to protect the building, the staff, and the residents. Management didn't protect us at all. And what I mean by that, one unit housed over 100 people, where there are supposed to be two OCs on there, on the unit. You find yourself being the only one on there. Now ask yourself, how can one set of eyes watch 140 plus people? It can't.
When I first got into the field, I didn't know how to balance the person that I was outside of work and the person that I needed to become inside of the field, to not let guys think that I was weak or to set those boundaries. So I became really mean and I lost my personal skills as far as outside of work. And, I didn't like that. I didn't like who the person it was making me to become.
It was a bittersweet job, and we did it. I did it because it was a job. It was my job. I did my job. Gotta have thick skin. If you don't have thick skin, you're not going to succeed in that field at all.
It was hard to really help people who were basically being warehoused. There was no real treatment. It was a joke. And even the guys that were there knew it was all about the money. It was a revolving door, but in many ways it was meant to be a revolving door, because if you're not addressing the issue that's underlying everything that's causing this gentleman to come in and out of prison, then of course he's going to come in and out of prison.
I don't allow the facility or the madness or the corruption to change who I am. I've been working in the field now so that I know what to expect.
Stress is something that we have to deal with on the job. We have no choice. Most of our stress as correction officers comes from our supervisors. Supervisors that don't support us, supervisors that are ill-prepared, ill-trained, and poor decision makers.
At times I was very condescending, which was very kind of hurtful in my relationship, because I would bring, those daily corruptness and that manipulative behavior and those lies, and I would bring it home and take it out on my mate, because I'm surrounded with men who constantly wants to be, taking advantage of you, or want to lie, or just try to get their way, or their instant gratification, and that drives me insane.
When I first started, I worked several mandations, which meant that I had to work a 16-hour shift at least 3 times out of the week and 6 times in a 2-week period. And it began to take an effect on my physical well-being. I was always tired. I never had any energy. I didn't want to do anything because I didn't have the energy to want to do anything. And it started to have a serious effect on, my lifestyle.
I started in corrections when I was 24, and I would say that it has changed me a lot because I was naive, and it's humbled my spirit a lot because you see all the different situations that a person can get themselves into based off their circumstances and the choices that they make.
Mentally, it's the games that the inmates play, and it's the games that management plays on you to keep you on your P's and Q's.
Hi, my name is Noelle Roberts, and I am a former nurse in the prison system. I worked the minimum security prison all the way to maximum security. Initially, I began at the weekenders program at minimum security. Those were your guys that had DUI, child support issues, or transgender, prostitution. And they would come there Friday through Sunday, and they were allowed to work Monday through Friday. Prior to actually being on the unit, we were trained prison training, and then we had nursing orientation. So they prepared us for scenarios in the prison and all of that. It was a little scary initially. I was intimidated at first, but I figured it was, if I'm out amongst criminals all the time, meaning there are people committing crime in the world, we just don't see all the time them committing a crime.
One of the primary concerns that we have in the mental health profession is post-traumatic stress disorder, and that's for people especially who are in these types of employments that we consider to be trauma prone.
The second that that door closes behind you, you have to not forget that you're in a prison and not forget the type of people that you're around.
I was assaulted numerous times. Every time he'd come in, he'd put his hand down my shirt, he'd reach over, he'd grab me, he'd grab my butt, he'd grab my hand, he'd say, "Oh, touch this," and he'd pull your hand, and I was always like, "Stop, stop," and it never stopped. I mean, it was a continuous thing. So I thought, I'm just the only one.
He's trying to grab me. He's trying to put his arms around me. He's trying to grab my breast. He's trying to grab my butt, trying to get his hands up my shirt. You tell him, no, quit, stop, leave me alone, get off. How many ways can a person say no?
The officers say their harasser was their supervisor.
Post-traumatic stress disorder can occur by a single event. It can also occur from accumulation of events.
As women have entered the workforce, there has been resentment on the part of men, and no question that there has been sexual harassment. I've certainly seen it myself.
Bob has worked in the prison system for a long time. He actually has, he was a police officer back in his day, and he's done health behavior work. But out of all the jobs he's had since we've been together, I noticed a change in him after he worked for a prison called CEC. He would never come home and give me attitude, but he would come home and he like go off on just what his day was like or what his evening was like, because at first he started out in the evening shift, third shift I think it was, and he just go on a rant about how, you know, how he wanted to make changes, how his supervisors were like blind to the, well, maybe not blind, maybe just not thoughtful of what was going on in these prisons, or in this particular prison that he.
According to a 2012 study, roughly 31% of correctional officers experience post-traumatic stress disorder. This is an alarmingly high statistic. Even if you are not a corrections officer yourself, it is still important to understand the stresses that they face. Correctional officers also suffer from mental stress. This is probably caused by the long periods of time they spend in jail or prison. Even though they get to go home at the end of their shift, they are very similar to the inmates. They too are behind the prison walls for the majority of their day and experiencing many of the same hardships that the inmates do.
You don't talk suicide behind the walls. That is something that shows emotion and emotional weakness.
It was a tragic scene, one that started badly, ended even worse. A New Jersey corrections officer pulls her pistol and shoots her boyfriend.
Police race to the scene, and then, with officers only feet away, she does the unthinkable.
It's the unthinkable indeed. A murder-suicide followed. Police say Kelly McKenneth shot her own son inside their Huntington Terrace apartment and then turned the gun on herself. And there wasn't much doctors could do here at the hospital when the two arrived. She had been medically cleared to come back to work following maternity leave to go back to her job as a corrections officer, and they tell us they're not aware of any kind of medical or mental problems she was having.
On April 8, 2002, at Folsom State Prison in California, there was a riot between rival gangs. Correctional staff quickly stopped the fighting, and none of the inmates were critically injured. However, one of the correctional officers sustained a serious spinal injury, and later, 9 months later, a correctional captain who oversaw the riot committed suicide, apparently because of what he saw on that day.
Most people would deny that it even existed at all, but we were developing more and more evidence that, in fact, it did exist, and it was preventing people from doing the right thing, for speaking up when bad things were happening, illegal things were happening, and it had to be exposed and it had to be cleaned up.